talking about how to start an LLC in Indiana, and what you can see behind me here is a checklist that we're going to be running through, and I'm casting this from my computer, and this is available for you for free. But one of the most important parts before getting your LLC set up is understanding some of the things that can lead to the LLC dumpster fire. Now, the way you get there is you don't understand terms such as piercing the corporate veil, registered agents, commingling funds, pass-through taxation, how the LLC renewal process works, and then do you understand business licenses and permits that you may need? Now, to go a little bit zoomed in on these topics right here, what we're going to do is we're actually going to zoom out a little bit, and we're going to be talking about what an LLC actually does for your business. The reason we're going to start here is just to kind of give you a baseline of knowledge, because a lot of times people get a little bit confused. But by doing this, it's going to make it easier for us to understand these other topics as we walk through a hypothetical scenario. So why don't we go down here, and first we're going to talk about the LLC. It's a limited liability company, and what it does is it offers limited liability protection. We're going to explain that in a moment here, and it also offers pass-through taxation. Why don't we start with an example of owning a coffee shop without an LLC? What you can see here is a business owner in the center, and they have their personal home, personal car, personal bank account connected to them, but then also this coffee shop that they have the point of sale, the bank account, the actual location, the espresso machine, the lights. All of this is connected back to the LLC to the business owner because they don't have an LLC. This creates a lot of liability, and you'll see why in this example, because you could also own an LLC that owns a coffee shop. So now we have the business owner on the left, and they have their personal home, personal car, personal bank account. But on the right-hand side, we have Acme Coffee LLC, and the LLC is connected to all those same assets that we discussed before. What that red line in the middle is called the corporate veil. Now, if you recall earlier, we talked about piercing the corporate veil, and we also talked about commingling funds. We're going to talk about those two things right now in an example. Now, let's say, unfortunately, that you're sued. Somebody is injured in the coffee shop. They hire an attorney. What that attorney is going to try to do is they're going to try to find cracks in the foundation of your LLC. And if they are able to find these cracks and present it to a judge, and a judge agrees with them, they're going to be able to do something called piercing the corporate veil. What that does is it gets rid of this red division between your personal and business assets, so that when you're sued, the person suing you can come after not only your business assets, but your personal assets as well. Now, a good example of this is commingling funds. Let's say that you don't get a business bank account set up right away, so you're running transactions through your personal bank account. So you have your personal expenses in there, but then you have business expenses going through there as well. That's called commingling funds. And this is an example where a judge, if it's presented to them, they can agree that this is something that you shouldn't be doing, and that the attorney suing you can pierce the corporate veil and come after both sides of the house. Now, you can understand why this can get pretty specific, but it's important to understand these little topics because it's not just about getting your LLC set up, it's making sure you're maintaining it, making sure that you're operating it correctly, which we're going to get to later in this video series. What I want to do, though, right now is talk about an explanation of pass-through taxation. A lot of new business owners don't understand how taxation works for their LLC. It's called pass-through taxation, sometimes referred to as flow-through taxation. Let's say that you have a great first year, you gross $140,000 of income, you have $90,000 of expenses, and then $50,000 of net income. The IRS is not taxing the LLC. That $50,000 of net income is passing through, or also called flow-through taxation, to the business owner, and the IRS is taxing the business owner on their personal tax return. Just wanted to make you aware of that because sometimes people get that confused around tax time. It's helpful to understand that today. But we will be talking about later in this video series how you can take an LLC and change the election of it into an S Corp, and then you can potentially save on taxes down the line, which is actually one of the items in our bonus section here when we get into future tax savings. What I want to do right now, though, is go over a checklist for starting your LLC, because now we have more of a better baseline foundation of what your LLC is doing for you and why it's so important to make sure you understand things like commingling funds and registered agents. What we're going to do first is just get this checklist for yourself. There's a QR code on the screen that you can scan for it, or there's a link in the description below. It's free for you to grab, and I would highly suggest you check out the bonuses and glossary of terms. If there's things that I'm bringing up in this video that are unfamiliar to you, there may be available in the glossary of terms. But then also under the bonuses section, this is pretty cool, there's an AI chatbot. So what you can do with this is you can say how to start an LLC in Indiana. So here you can see that the information is being compiled by the AI chatbot. You can also do things like how to register an EIN. We're going to explain that for you in a little bit. But there's a lot of cool resources available for you, especially the yearly accounting calendar is going to be super helpful. Now, first you need to do is decide which route you want to go. Do you want to go through the state website, online LLC services, or a business attorney? Frankly, this is an entire video topic on itself. So when we get to video 2 of the series, that's what we're going to be talking about down here. But what I'm going to tell you for this video, we're going to start with just going through the state website. I'm going to explain how that works, and then why you may want to consider other routes as we get going through there. Now, decide on a business name for your LLC. What I'll say here is a lot of times people will blow this out of proportion. They get a lot of pressure on themselves, like trying to get the perfect LLC name. What you do need to do with that LLC name is make sure that it's unique within your state. But what you don't need is the perfect LLC name. Now, the reason for that is, let's say you go with Acme Coffee LLC, like terrible name for a coffee shop. You can have that LLC, and then underneath it, within it, you can have a DBA, a doing business as, or a fictitious name. And what that'll do is that will allow you to have something like Espresso Yourself Cafe live underneath the LLC. So the LLC doesn't have to be your brand name, so don't put a lot of pressure on yourself there. But then once you do have a name that you come up with, and I'd highly suggest using tools like ChatGPT. It's great for brainstorming for ideas. You can go to this list here, and we're going to find Indiana. And then what we're looking for is the database. So the business name. Now in Indiana, like let's say you say we're the Hoosiers, right? I don't know why I said that with such a heavy H. And then I search for this. What we're going to find is there's going to be a lot of business names with the name Hoosiers in it. So that's what you're seeing right here, and there's 5 more pages. So that might be a tough name to have a unique name for. But let's say I kind of jam out on the keyboard here, click the I'm not a robot, and then search. What do we have now? This is what you're looking for here is no data found. This pop-up box right here is telling us that there's not a company of that name within the state of Indiana in the database. Now we're going to go to actually forming your LLC because we have a unique name. Now you can start with registering your LLC name before you write your articles of organization, and that's kind of like a half step. And the best way to describe this is, let's say you want to get your LLC set up. It's not just filing the articles of organization, which is the actual document which files the LLC. You have that half step of registering the LLC name. It's similar to getting a domain set up. And now, let's say you don't have the time and resources to actually build the website today. So you take that half step of just securing the domain name. You pay for the domain name to do the rest later. That's what you're doing when you're registering your LLC. But in this particular case, what we're going to do is we're going to go again through a state directory here. These bullet points explain what's going to be on your articles of organization. And then we're going to click on Indiana again. And then this is what your articles of organization looks like in Indiana. This is if you're actually doing like the old school method and you're printing this out and you're mailing it in. You can do this online through the state website as well. What I will say is that when you're going through the state website, it's going to be clunkier. It's going to be harder to go through the process. They don't do a great job of explaining things. But what I want to do at this point here is just cover a couple items. So first, Article 1 is name and principal office. Pretty easy. If you don't have an office address, it's going to be your home address. Article 2 is registered office and agent. And it says the name and street address of the LLC's registered agent and registered office for service of process are. What does that mean? Well, a registered agent is a third party, and what they do is they handle important communication and documentation for your business. So the service of process that it mentions there, that's a way of saying, like, if you're to be sued, your service of process notice, like you're being requested to be at court, they're going to make sure that you're getting that notice and that you're showing up to court with the proper documents that you need. The reason I find the state website so lacking is they don't even really explain what the registered agent is. And this does a poor job because they don't tell you that it has to have a physical address, this person, in the state of Indiana, and it cannot be a P.O. box. So the state website just kind of says like, hey, who is this? They don't give you that information. When you go through an online LLC service, they not only have registered agents for you, some of those services will even give you the registered agent free for the first year. So that's where you can start to see a big difference between going the state route or going through a private online LLC service. Article 3, dissolution, the latest date upon which the LLC is to dissolve. Most people are going to be setting up an LLC because they want it to run in perpetuity. So if that's the case, you're going to click this second checkbox here. And then management, who are its members and managers, and you're going to put that information and you're going to sign this, and then you're going to send it off. One thing right here, really small in the upper right-hand corner, this is as of 2024. There's a $90 filing fee. That goes to the Secretary of State. There is no way around that fee, whether you go online through the state website, through the LLC tools, or a business attorney, you're going to pay that fee. But I just wanted to make you aware of that. Of course, that fee will go up over time. So then once you write your articles in an organization, we assign a registered agent. You file it with the state. Next, what you may want to consider is creating and signing an LLC operating agreement. What that operating agreement does is it spells out who are the managers and members of the LLC, what are their roles and responsibilities, but also things such as like what happens if somebody wants to leave the business, they want to exit the LLC. Now, going back to the coffee shop example, let's say you have one day you have 25 coffee shops and you had a business partner from day one and that business partner wants to leave the business. Well, what is that worth? And a lot of times what ends up happening is you end up having to get lawyers involved. It is tens of thousands of dollars in litigation because you didn't already spell this out in the beginning. So what the operating agreement is for your LLC is it's one of those situations where an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Now, do you have to have it to get set up? No. Could you set one up in a month from now? Absolutely. But if you go through the online LLC services, most times they will have a boilerplate template. If you have a more complex situation, you have a lot of staff or you're making a lot of money already, you may want to consider going through a business attorney, especially if you have a partner, and spelling this out in that operating agreement from day one. Next, what we want to talk about is after the LLC formation. We're going to get set up with an EIN. There's an IRS link right here. And what an EIN is an employer identification number. What that does is it's like a social security number for the IRS, but for your business. It allows them to identify it so they can, of course, tax you. But in certain situations, you're going to be required to have an EIN. Once you start having employees on payroll, you're going to need an EIN. But also, it helps legitimize your business. So let's say you're going for like an office space, you want to lease some office space, or you need business insurance, or you're trying to get a loan. When you're providing an EIN, it makes you look more professional as opposed to using your personal social security number. And this is free to set up through the IRS website. It'll walk you through how to do it here. Also, the online LLC services will do this for you for an additional fee. The state website is not going to help you with anything on the federal level whatsoever. You'll also see that comes into play here with obtaining business licenses and permits for your LLC. Really helpful resource here from the SBA. What I'd recommend is you can go to this and go down to Indiana and then start looking at things on the state and territory level. But again, easiest way to explain this is through an example. Let's say that you're getting a brewery set up, and with that brewery, you're going to be brewing beer, you're going to be distributing beer, and perhaps you're serving beer on premise. Those three things may require different licenses and permits, and those can happen on the federal level, the state level, and the local level. A lot of times people get their LLC set up and they think they're done, but they don't get these licenses and permits. Other popular examples like you're a chiropractor, a dentist, you're opening up a construction company. You can see how there's different licenses and permits that are needed to operate these businesses. Not all businesses need them. Again, the state website is not going to help you with this really. They will on the state level. What I'd recommend is you can actually call your town clerk or your city clerk and give them a call and say, hey, I'm setting up this type of business, or maybe it's a coffee shop. What do I need to know? What kind of licenses and permits do I need? Or when you go through the online legal tools, they will actually do that research for you, again, for an additional fee. But if you're nervous about getting the right things set up, they can help you make sure that you get all the right licenses and permits for your business. In the next video, what we're going to be discussing are the fees associated with setting up your LLC. On this embedded document here, we actually have a calculator that will down to the dollar tell you what it's going to cost you to own your LLC in Indiana for 5 years. We have his star ratings that we explain here, comparing the three different services, going through the state site or the online tools or business attorneys. This is really helpful too. There's something called domestic LLCs and foreign LLCs. We're going to explain that in the next video. And then we're going to go deep dive into different questions worth asking about which route might make the most sense for you. And this is really helpful because there may be things that you're not considering today. Like you're like, well, I'm not buying rental property through the business, but you may in the future. And then that's going to help inform you on those decisions and when it may make sense to talk to a business attorney. Again, I would highly recommend that you get this checklist for yourself. There's a lot of cool free resources on here for you just to make it easy for you for getting set up. And I'll catch you in that next video.